annual title game. Two good reasons are Bruin guards Mike Warren and Lucius Allen, together labeled the best backcourt in the country. Then there's Lou Alcindor, who will be covered man-to-man by North Carolina's Rusty Clark. If Clark can halt Alcindor and Larry Miller can score often, the Tar Heels may be able to pull off the upset. Even the Bruins' sixth man, Ken Heights, has that shooting eye. The 78-55 UCLA win is the most one-sided victory in NCAA title game history. And Coach Wooden reflects on this great championship team.
This is truly a great basketball team. I've been reluctant to say so earlier in the year, but I believe at our best we're the finest basketball team that has ever played college basketball. Now having won our second championship in a row and our fourth in the last 5 years, of course, gives me a tremendous amount of pleasure and pride and satisfaction in these young men.
The 1968-69 UCLA Bruins men's basketball team, otherwise known as UCLA, was 29-1 under Coach John Wooden. The most valuable player, Lou Alcindor, who became Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Number 33 dominated with 24 points per game. Anyone who watched television during the 1960s was fascinated by this incredible basketball team. Which leads into a story, a time travel story. There's a young man in Pennsylvania, Reedsville, Pennsylvania, who aspires to play for that team, the UCLA Bruins. He is actually contacted and they've set up an interview and they subsequently draft him onto the team for the next year. However, on December 20th, 1968, the worst that could happen happens. The young man, Greg Provost, slams his head into the corner of the basketball hoop unprotected. His career comes to a crashing end on the wooden floor of Paul Revere High School gym around 4 p.m. on December 20th, 1968. However, Greg would not be considered the main character in the book. When the book opens, it's the present day. Greg, wearing glasses and not quite the same as the young man before the accident, is having a few drinks and starts running at the mouth and talking about his past. Caroline Thatcher Provost is suddenly realizing that this man has more of a past than she had realized, that Greg Provost, real estate salesman and hardworking employee, has gone in a different direction from that backboard accident on December 20th, 1968. Before they leave the restaurant, the vehicle that allows them to go back in time makes an appearance, and it's very, very creepy. This lady, I call her the gypsy, is a white-haired, freaky-eyed woman who talks in almost a mystical cadence and warns Greg not to go into the city tonight. Caroline and Greg are going into the symphony to listen to the Christmas gala and the Christmas music at the symphony. It's a very dire warning. She's basically telling him he'll be killed if he goes in there. Now he blows this all off. Although Caroline is very, very concerned, they end up going into the city. They have a beautiful night at the symphony. They enjoy the Christmas spirit, the music, and they walk onto the street where somebody from Greg's past, from that same Paul Revere High School in the 1960s, comes out of nowhere, shoots Greg dead on the ground. Caroline has lost the love of her life. It isn't until 6 months later that, driving in a wretched thunderstorm through the back roads on the way to the airport to meet her uncle, who is bringing her on a vacation, does she encounter the same gypsy along the side of the road in this horrific thunderstorm, with the lightning zigzagging across the sky and the rain coming down, pouring down beyond belief as the windshield wipers keep moving back and forth across the car windshield. Caroline has been out to Greg's grave many times, thumbing through his high school yearbook. But now she's confronted by this same strange woman who had prophesied Greg's untimely death. What's really freaky about this, the woman just keeps reappearing. And it ends up inside the car and all the door handles are gone, and it's really harrowing for Caroline. But she manages somehow to escape this woman and get to the airport, and she gets on the plane, and her uncle seems to know what has happened to her. As the plane lifts off, the vehicle for going back in time, of course, is the thunderstorm and this freaky plane that you think the gypsy's done something to, and possibly she has, because the plane changes during the flight, and as she wakes up, everybody's in clothes from years before, and people are smoking on the plane, and the plane is landing in Philadelphia and not in the Caribbean where they were going. So she's back in time. And for Caroline, the central character here, she wants to see her husband again, yes, but she also realizes that by going back in time, she can prevent that accident that happened, that charts a course for Greg for a basketball career. When she gets back there, she's going to need money. Ben has no money, but Ben becomes the vehicle, the enabler for getting money. He knows how to gamble, and he already has knowledge of sporting events that happened during that time, so that becomes very interesting. They are drawn into that fictitious town in the hills of Pennsylvania along the river, and they end up congregating at a bar called Mickey Muldoon's Saloon. It also brings in Caroline within that clique of people, the townies that hang out there that pay attention to Ben. They like him an awful lot, and they also pay attention to Caroline and care about what happens to her. Caroline ends up getting a job at the local department store, Binghamton's. And in that store, working as a stock boy, is the high school basketball star Greg Provost. It's a reverse situation. Caroline is older now, older than Greg, whereas before Greg was a couple years older than she was. What develops here is a very strange thing. The feelings that they had for each other and how they clicked as a couple are even more intensified back in time. Greg receives a lot of flack for going out with a woman that's certainly in her 20s and he's only in high school. But they do click and the whole relationship develops. What messes it up is that same guy in the beginning of the book that shot Greg dead is now a wise guy, rotten, no good punk who is somehow making it through Paul Revere High School. His name is Marco St. Germain, and from the moment he sees Caroline inside the school, he goes after her and he doesn't let up. He's a vile, evil person who wants to disrupt the relationship with Greg, and he wants Caroline for himself. He's very street savvy and he figures out what the heck is going on here. He can't pinpoint that they've gone back in time, but he understands that she's there for a specific purpose. The whole idea of actually being back in another setting where you were viable and you had a whole different group of friends, it was earlier in your life, and to actually be back there is really enchanting. It's a very compelling draw to be back in that situation because you find yourself becoming immersed in that type of thing. She and Ben are working towards stopping that accident, and the whole thing gets messed up completely and ends up in a car chase and Marco trying to stop her and Mickey Muldoon getting involved and Ben's life put on the line as she tries to get to the gym to stop that accident. The device of a countdown timer, not the basketball game, but the countdown to December 20th and trying to fix that stitch in time to make it right, is a very good device in fueling the plot forward. It makes it very interesting because anything that gets in the way of that is an immediate tension and an immediate problem that has to be overcome. Caroline does get back to the future. Marco shows up on the scene in Reedsville as an older guy, fully aware of this whole time travel thing and fully aware that he's going to make them pay. Marco is even creepier in the future. Sometimes in the book, things can only be resolved by death. The climactic scene in this book, you really don't know what's going to happen, who's going to live, who's going to die, and what Marco will set in motion that will absolutely devastate everything. And the gypsy makes her final appearance. I like these characters, the simple amount of characters. They all have their role, from Ben supporting Caroline and Ben enabling her to have money back in time, and Caroline trying to resolve the death of her husband as well as what happened to him in his career. And Marco, the evil